Valen Dray was known as a rising star in indie cinema, captivating on screen, charming off it. Elira Voss was the quiet genius behind a thriving art gallery, celebrated for her haunting surrealist work. Together, they were the perfect couple, until the morning she was found lifeless at the bottom of their staircase. What looked like a tragic accident quickly unraveled into a chilling performance, with Valen at the center, not just as a grieving husband, but as a man who may have rehearsed every second of his own alibi. Valen Dray and Elira Voss were the kind of couple people envied. Their photographs graced lifestyle magazines, their home was the centerpiece of design blogs, and their appearances at film festivals and art galas turned heads. They lived in a sleek hillside mansion perched above the cliffs of Halden Bay, where the ocean stretched out endlessly below their glass-walled living room. Valen was known for his roles in brooding, emotional indie films. Though never quite a household name, he had a loyal following and a reputation for disappearing into his characters. Elira, by contrast, brought color and light into any room. Her boutique art gallery in the city's art district featured everything, from minimalist sculptures to explosive street murals, and it was quickly becoming a hub for emerging talent. To the public eye, they seemed like the perfect team, creative, successful, and madly in love. But behind closed doors, their life was anything but perfect. Friends close to them started noticing a shift. Valen, once charming and enthusiastic, grew distant and moody. He missed meetings, canceled appearances, and seemed increasingly obsessed with his career, which had hit a rough patch. Elira, on the other hand, was thriving. Her gallery was expanding. She was invited to speak at international exhibitions. The power dynamic in their marriage had changed, and not in a way Valen seemed to welcome. Despite the growing tension, no one expected what happened next. On a cold, quiet morning in February, emergency services received a frantic 911 call. Valen's voice was shaky, cracking as he told the operator that his wife had fallen down the stairs and wasn't breathing. Paramedics arrived within minutes to find Elira's body at the foot of the curved staircase in the main hall. She was wearing pajamas and a robe, her neck at an unnatural angle, eyes closed. There was no sign of struggle, no forced entry, no blood splatter, just a lifeless body on marble floors and a husband sobbing nearby. The initial police report described the incident as a tragic domestic accident. Officers found no immediate reason to suspect foul play. Valen cooperated fully, answering questions and providing details about how he had found her that morning. According to him, she had been carrying a load of laundry down the stairs when he heard a crash. He ran from the bedroom and found her on the ground, unresponsive. He stayed with family for a few days after the incident, while the house remained under light police watch. Friends brought him food, posted condolences online, and spoke of Elira in glowing terms. Tributes poured into her gallery. Valen posted a black and white photo of her with a heartfelt caption, thanking everyone for their support and asking for privacy. In videos taken at her memorial, he appeared devastated, his eyes red, his voice shaking as he spoke about the woman he'd loved and lost. But not everyone believed what they were seeing. Some noticed how composed Valen looked between moments of grief, how perfectly timed his emotional outbursts were. Others simply felt uneasy, unable to explain why. Elira's half-sister Mava was the first to openly voice her doubts. She said Elira had told her just days before the incident that she planned to leave Valen, that she had already spoken to a lawyer, that she had uncovered something about him, though she never said what. Mava insisted that Elira would never have fallen downstairs carrying laundry. She was meticulous, cautious. Something wasn't right. Still, there was no solid proof of anything but an accident. No witnesses, no confession, no weapon. Valen's alibi held. The world moved on. But in the shadows of their beautiful home, traces of something darker remained. Small things, subtle, easy to miss. And someone, somewhere, had started to look closer. After the memorial, Valen Dray returned to the house alone. The flowers were still fresh, sympathy cards lined the kitchen island, and Elira's coat still hung by the door. To the public, he was a man grieving in silence. He declined interviews, stopped responding to messages, and seemed to vanish into his home. But online, he curated a different image. His social media accounts became a canvas of sorrow and love, filled with poems about loss, photographs of Elira at her happiest, and reflections on the fragility of life. Thousands followed his posts. His follower count grew by the hour. Fans and strangers alike praised his strength and vulnerability, calling him a beautiful soul enduring the unimaginable. In videos, Valen appeared gaunt but graceful. His voice trembled at all the right moments. His eyes welled up but never overflowed. To many, it was raw and real, but to those who knew him best, it felt rehearsed. Maeva Lorne, Elira's half-sister, watched the videos with unease. Something about them felt off, too polished, too perfect. She remembered how Elira had changed in the final weeks before her death. She had started hiding her phone, keeping her laptop locked, and avoiding long conversations. When Maeva asked if something was wrong, Elira would only say that things with Valen were complicated. Maeva took her concerns to the local police department again, pushing them to revisit the case. Initially, her complaints were noted, but not prioritized. There was no autopsy indicating blunt force trauma, no obvious injury other than the neck fracture consistent with a fall. But something in her persistence struck a chord with Detective Ivan Roque, a quiet man with a long history of noticing what others missed. He asked to re-examine the case, not officially reopening it, but reviewing the evidence with fresh eyes. He started with the house. The police had cleared it already, but Roque requested a walkthrough. The residence was spotless, clean to the point of being unnatural. The staircase where Elira had fallen gleamed, but one detail caught his attention: a small, irregular patch on the drywall near the lower half of the stairs. It was textured differently, painted over slightly off color. He asked for permission to inspect it more closely. Behind the patched drywall, they discovered a shard of broken glass, nearly invisible to the naked eye, and a speck of what appeared to be dried blood. The discovery shifted everything. Lab analysis confirmed the blood belonged to Elira. The glass fragment didn't match any decorative piece in the house. This wasn't debris from a fall, it was something else. They obtained a new search warrant and seized all of Valen's electronics. His laptop, hidden external hard drives, and cameras were taken in for forensic analysis. The results were startling. On his laptop was a folder labeled Character Study. Inside were dozens of video clips of Valen recording himself in various emotional states. In one, he simulates discovering a body. He gasps, clutches his head, sinks to the floor in despair. He picks up a phone, dials, and pleads for help. The performance is striking and nearly identical to the real 911 call he made the morning of Elira's death. That call was now under renewed scrutiny. Audio analysts broke it down frame by frame, noting how his breathing was controlled, how his distress peaked at calculated intervals. The timing wasn't just emotional, it was practiced. More troubling still, investigators found that Valen had run internet searches weeks before the incident on how to induce a fall injury, non-obvious murder methods, and how to cry on command. He had even bookmarked articles on how actors prepared for emotionally intense roles. The evidence was damning, but Valen remained calm when questioned again. He explained the videos as part of his audition process. He was preparing for a new role, a grieving widower in a psychological thriller. The timing, he said, was a haunting coincidence. The videos weren't sinister, they were artistic, but to the detectives, it felt like a lie wrapped in performance. The grieving husband had memorized his role. Now they needed to prove he had written the script for more than just the screen. Digging deeper into Valen Dray's digital life revealed layers that even seasoned investigators hadn't expected. The videos in the character study folder were only the beginning. There were timelines, marked calendars, and typed documents with dialogue-like entries that eerily mirrored real events. He had outlined scenarios, tested emotional reactions in front of a mirror, and filmed himself from different angles. Every sigh, every tear, every word he spoke in his real-life 911 call appeared to have been practiced. The line between performance and reality had blurred in disturbing ways. For detectives, the question shifted from "Did Valen kill Elira?" to "How long had he been planning it?" The level of preparation pointed to premeditation, not panic or impulse. They reviewed security camera footage from the area, hoping to catch an outsider approaching the home that night. But nothing showed. Only Valen and Elira entered that day. Only Valen remained. Forensics confirmed the shard of glass found inside. The patched drywall was from a shattered vase that had once sat on a shelf near the top of the stairs. The vase had disappeared, but a faint circular mark in the dust hinted at where it once stood. There was no record of it being broken, and Elira had never mentioned it missing to anyone. Investigators now believed the vase had been used as a weapon, heavy enough to knock her unconscious or worse. The clean break, the hiding of the fragment, and the rushed patch job on the wall painted a picture far more sinister than a simple accident. Financial records added another layer. Valen and Elira shared several joint accounts, but shortly before her death, Elira had opened 2 personal ones in secret. She had moved over $130,000 into one of them from the gallery's profits. She also consulted with a divorce attorney and made inquiries about changing the beneficiary on her life insurance policy. Valen, until then, had been the sole beneficiary of a $2 million policy. The request to remove him was never finalized. She died before the paperwork could be processed. When confronted with this information, Valen's demeanor didn't change. He maintained his innocence, saying that Elira had been going through emotional difficulties and had talked about needing space, but never mentioned divorce. He insisted they had been reconnecting before the tragedy, even planning a short trip together. But there was no evidence of a booked vacation, no recent travel receipts, and nothing in Elira's messages or journals to suggest she had any intention of reconciliation. Detectives recovered voice memos from Elira's phone that told a different story. In one, she said she no longer trusted Valen and had caught him looking through her private messages. In another, she expressed fear that if she left, he would do something drastic. She never mentioned physical abuse, but her tone was tense, and her words deliberate. She seemed to be documenting her thoughts for protection, in case something ever happened to her. Then came the most chilling discovery. On an external drive stored in a locked drawer of Valen's office desk, investigators found a fake video. In it, Elira appeared to be speaking directly to the camera. Her hair was styled differently, and her voice was slightly distorted, as if edited. In the video, she talks about being overwhelmed and hints at ending her life. But audio experts determined the voice wasn't hers. It had been pieced together using samples from past interviews and public recordings. The face on screen was a deepfake, generated with a body double and manipulated footage. This video, investigators believed, was Valen's backup plan. If the accident narrative failed, he would release it, framing Elira's death as suicide. It was evidence not just of guilt, but of long-term calculated manipulation. The performance extended beyond grief. It became clear that Valen had scripted every aspect of the tragedy, from the crime scene to the public reaction. By the time charges were officially filed, first-degree murder and evidence tampering, the case had shifted from a quiet accident to one of the most disturbing premeditated crimes in the region's recent history. Valen didn't resist arrest. He simply asked when the cameras would arrive. Valen Dray's trial became a national spectacle. Courtrooms were typically somber, but his felt more like a stage. Reporters lined up outside the courthouse, Every day, the press captured his arrival in designer suits, his hair perfectly styled, expression solemn but composed. Online, opinion was divided. Some saw him as a grieving husband wrongly accused, an artist punished for his craft. Others believed he was a manipulator hiding behind the mask of performance. The courtroom itself had the strange atmosphere of a live drama, one in which the star was playing for his life. From the first day, Valen leaned into his role. He sat with perfect posture, often jotting down notes with a silver pen. He exchanged polite smiles with jurors. Every testimony he gave was delivered with smooth cadence, pauses in all the right places, eyes occasionally glistening with emotion. His legal team described him as misunderstood, an actor whose emotional rehearsals had been taken out of context. They claimed his so-called character study videos were normal for someone in his profession, preparation for a role he'd been offered in a crime thriller. They submitted scripts, casting notes, and email correspondence with a small production company to support their claim. But the prosecution wasn't interested in performances. They focused on facts. First, they presented the timeline, how Elira had moved money to private accounts, met with a divorce attorney, and changed her locks within the last month of her life. Then came the forensic evidence, the missing vase, the bloodied shard of glass found hidden in patched drywall, and the broken patchwork itself, done hastily and painted over the night before her death. They highlighted how no neighbors had heard. An accident, no signs of a fall were found on the staircase, and Elira's injuries suggested she had been struck, not fallen. The digital trail was more damning than any physical clue. A cyber forensics expert took the stand to explain how Valen had accessed voice samples, editing software, and AI face manipulation tools to create a fake suicide video. He had saved it under an innocuous file name and hid it within layers of unrelated folders. The video, according to the expert, was carefully constructed using advanced editing techniques beyond the average user's capabilities. Valen's defense argued it was an experimental art piece, something he never intended to release. They said he had been researching grief, identity, and mortality through digital media. But the tone in the courtroom shifted. Jurors didn't see an artist. They saw a man using creativity to mislead, to deceive, to escape justice. Maeva Lorne, Elira's half-sister, was one of the most impactful witnesses. She spoke clearly, recounting her last conversations with Elira, including the fear in her sister's voice and the plans she was making to leave. Her words were direct, steady, and stripped of emotion in a way that made them land harder. When she said, "Elira told me she didn't feel safe," the courtroom was silent. But Valen never faltered. When he took the stand in his own defense, he told the jury about their love story, how he and Elira had met at a film premiere, how they built a life out of passion and ambition. He spoke about her quirks, her dreams, and how devastated he was when he found her that morning. He maintained he would never hurt her, that what the prosecution painted as planning was simply coincidence and artistic method. And in those moments, some watching believed him. Still, behind the smooth exterior, the evidence kept stacking. Prosecutors reminded the jury that coincidence doesn't hide evidence behind walls. It doesn't simulate suicide. It doesn't mimic grief with precision. It doesn't research how to cry on command. Closing arguments were delivered with gravity. The prosecution called Valen a man who rehearsed grief better than he lived truth. The defense described him as a scapegoat with a misunderstood mind. When the jury left to deliberate, the courtroom was still. Valen tapped his pen 3 times, adjusted his cufflinks, and waited. Not like a man fearing a verdict, but like one expecting a curtain call. The jury deliberated for 3 days. News stations camped outside the courthouse, live streaming every possible update. Commentators analyzed the jurors' body language, dissected testimony, and speculated on the outcome. Inside, the courtroom remained tense. Valen Dray sat at the defense table, expression neutral, hands folded neatly in front of him. He wore a charcoal suit with a deep blue tie, the same shade Elira had once worn to a gallery opening. Whether it was coincidence or a subtle final performance, no one could say for sure. When the jury returned, the atmosphere shifted. The foreperson stood, hands trembling slightly, and read the verdict. Guilty on all counts: first-degree murder, evidence tampering, and attempted obstruction of justice. Gasps echoed through the courtroom. Valen didn't flinch. He looked straight ahead, expression unreadable, like an actor holding his final pose before the lights dim. The judge thanked the jury and immediately moved to sentencing. Given the overwhelming evidence and the disturbing level of premeditation, Valen Dray received life in prison without the possibility of parole. The trial's conclusion sent shockwaves through both the entertainment world and the art community. Fans who once admired Valen's emotional depth now saw it as calculated manipulation. Articles changed tone overnight, from praising his artistry to questioning how long he'd blurred the line between acting and reality. Former co-stars gave interviews reflecting on strange moments they had once dismissed. Valen crying off camera for no reason, method acting breakdowns that seemed too intense, and rehearsals that left others unsettled. Meanwhile, Elira Voss's legacy began to grow, in a different direction. Her gallery, once a hidden gem in the city's art district, transformed into a space of remembrance and resilience. Maeva took over its operations and renamed it the Voss House. She curated an exhibit of Elira's personal artwork and journal excerpts, including entries where Elira had reflected on self-worth, independence, and healing. The collection struck a nerve. Visitors traveled from across the country to experience it. The exhibit became a symbol for those who had survived emotional manipulation and for those who hadn't had a voice. Behind bars, Valen remained composed. Prison officials noted he adapted quickly, often observed writing in notebooks, sometimes mouthing lines in his cell. He received letters, some from curious fans, others from aspiring actors asking for advice. Occasionally, he responded with long, reflective messages. But over time, his relevance faded. The world moved on. His name became a cautionary tale rather than one of fame. Detective Ivan Roque quietly closed the case file months later. He didn't speak to reporters. He didn't want recognition. But privately, he admitted that something about Valen's calm still disturbed him. The way he played grief like a symphony, the way he choreographed chaos into something beautiful and false. Roque had worked many cases, but this one lingered. Not because of the crime itself, but because of the performance wrapped around it. Years later, a documentary titled Scripted Grief premiered on a streaming platform. It chronicled the story of Elira Voss, the investigation, the trial, and the unsettling footage that blurred truth and fiction. The final scene showed a slow-motion clip from one of Valen's self-recorded videos. Him crying, holding an invisible phone, whispering for help. The screen faded to black as a voiceover asked, was it ever real, or was he always just waiting for applause? Elira's story became more than tragedy. It became a reminder of how charm can deceive, of how talent can mask intent, and how sometimes the most convincing lies are told not with words, but with silence, timing, and a perfectly placed tear.